They thought they found something better. They believed replacing you would be easy. They walked away convinced they were upgrading, certain that the grass was greener on the other side. Right now, it might look like they were right. You see them smiling, glowing, posting pictures of their new and improved life. It seems effortless, as if you were nothing more than a pit stop on their way to something greater. And that thought, that's what's eating you alive. You sit there convincing yourself they've moved on, that they're happier than ever, that you were never enough. But here's what you don't see: the cracks that are already forming, the little moments of doubt creeping in, the whispers of regret they haven't spoken out loud yet. Because what looks perfect on the outside doesn't mean it's real. You don't see them staring at their phone late at night, scrolling through old messages, remembering the way you made them feel. You don't see the way they compare their new relationship to what they had with you, the things they took for granted, the way you understood them like no one else could. Right now, they're still high off the thrill of something new, drunk on the excitement of a fresh start. But here's what they don't realize. The way they left you is exactly how they'll be left. Relationships built on betrayal, on convenience, on running from one person to the next. They don't last. They never do. Because people who chase the next best thing always end up chasing forever. And the best part, you don't have to lift a finger. No begging, no proving your worth, no trying to show them what they lost. Time has a way of exposing everything, and trust me, time is already working in your favor. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're in a casino. There's a brand new slot machine, flashing bright lights, promising bigger wins and better rewards. It's loud, it's exciting, and it's calling your name. You give up the steady, reliable machine you've been playing for years and go all in on the new one. At first it's a rush. Every spin feels like a jackpot. But then the machine starts glitching. The wins slow down and the thrill fades. Suddenly you realize you've made a mistake. That old machine, the one you left behind, was steady, dependable, a sure thing in the long run. But now it's gone, and there's no getting it back. That's exactly what's happening right now. They're gambling with something new, believing they've hit the jackpot. But when the shine wears off, when the excitement turns into routine, when the cracks start showing, who do you think they'll start thinking about? Stay with me, because by the time we're done here, you'll understand something very important. They should be the ones regretting this, not you. But first, let's get one thing clear. You are not an option. You are not a stepping stone. You are not someone to be replaced, discarded, or forgotten. And starting today, you stop treating yourself like one. Say it out loud. I am irreplaceable. Write it in the comments. Own it. Live it. Because the biggest mistake they ever made was thinking they could walk away from you and find something better. But when reality hits, when they realize what they ran to doesn't compare, that's when the regret begins. That's when their fantasy starts to fall apart. Trust me, what's coming next will make sure they never see you the same way again. The grass isn't greener, it's just painted. They thought they found something better, thought they upgraded, thought they traded you in for something shinier, newer, more exciting. But what they don't realize is that not everything that glitters is gold. Imagine driving the same car for years. It's reliable, solid, always gets you where you need to go. It's been through storms, long roads, and rough terrains, but it never lets you down. Then, one day, you see something flashy, a sleek, brand new model with all the bells and whistles. Suddenly, the car you've depended on for so long feels ordinary. Without a second thought, you trade it in. At first, it's exhilarating. The smell of something new, the thrill of the unknown, the rush of change. But then the problems start. The seats aren't as comfortable. The ride isn't as smooth. The flashy features you were so excited about start feeling unnecessary. Worst of all, you realize that the car you left behind, the one you thought wasn't enough, was built to last, and now it's gone. That's exactly what's happening to them right now. They thought they were moving on to something better, thought they were escaping, thought they were winning. But what they don't realize yet is that they've been chasing a mirage, because people don't leave for better. They leave for different. And different isn't always better. Right now, they're caught up in the high, the thrill of the new, the validation of fresh eyes looking at them like they're special, the dopamine rush of novelty. They think they've made the right choice, that this new relationship is everything they were missing. But what they don't know, what they don't want to admit, is that time will expose everything. Because when someone runs from one person to the next, what they're really doing is running from themselves. They convince themselves that the problem was you, that they just weren't fulfilled, that they needed something more exciting. But in reality, they were just chasing a distraction. Because facing their own flaws, their own patterns, their own emptiness would require real growth, and people who run don't grow. Here's where it gets interesting. They expect you to react, expect you to be watching from the sidelines, heartbroken, jealous, consumed with thoughts of them. They want to know you're hurting, that you're still attached, that even though they left, they still hold a piece of you. But what happens when you don't give them that? What happens when you don't beg, when you don't cry, when you don't chase after them trying to prove your worth? That's when their illusion starts to crack, because the moment you do nothing, the moment you step back, focus on yourself, and act as if their absence doesn't even affect you, that's when they start questioning everything. They start checking your page. They start wondering if you've moved on. They start noticing that you haven't reached out, and suddenly that upgrade doesn't feel so secure anymore. Because deep down, they were expecting you to break. They were expecting you to make them feel important, to confirm their belief that they weren't the prize. But instead, they're left wondering if they ever even mattered to you at all. And let me tell you something. That thought, that unanswered question, will haunt them more than any words ever could. Because people don't regret losing you when you tell them what they lost. They regret losing you when they start feeling the loss. And the best part? You don't have to do a single thing, no revenge, no jealousy games, no trying to prove you were the better choice. You just exist. You just keep living, growing, evolving. And the more they see you thriving without them, the more their so-called upgrade starts to feel like a downgrade. Because here's the thing about novelty, it fades. The spark that felt so intoxicating at first doesn't last. The excitement of someone new wears off. And when it does, that's when reality punches them in the face. That's when they start comparing. That's when they start remembering. That's when they realize that what they had with you wasn't just comfort, it was home. By then, it's too late. Because while they were out there chasing illusions, you became something they can never reach again. And that's the part they'll never forgive themselves for. 2. Gone without a trace. Imagine sitting in a packed theater, watching a magician perform his final, most elaborate trick. The tension builds, the audience leans in, breath held, waiting for the grand reveal, the moment that ties it all together. But then, nothing. No dramatic ending, no explanation, no closure. The magician simply vanishes. And now the audience isn't just surprised. They're haunted, confused, unsettled. That's exactly what just happened to them. They expected drama, expected a reaction, expected you to crumble, but instead silence, nothing. And that's what's breaking them. Because here's the truth. Your absence is louder than anything you could ever say. Right now, they assume you're watching. They assume you're lurking in the background, waiting, hurting, keeping tabs. They expect you to dissect their new relationship, stalk their page, overanalyze every post, every little sign that maybe, just maybe, they're regretting it. They expect to see sad quotes, cryptic messages, desperate attempts to get their attention. They expect anger, tears, one last attempt to make them understand what they lost. Because that's what most people do. Most people react. They try to prove something, they try to win. But when you don't, when you do the one thing they never saw coming, when you go completely silent, when you move like they never existed, that's when the panic sets in. Why aren't they reaching out? Why aren't they angry? Why don't they care? Why don't they care? They pretend it doesn't bother them. They'll laugh louder, post more, act like life is better now. But inside, that silence starts eating them alive, because suddenly the person they assumed would always be there, the one they were so sure they could come back to if they ever changed their mind, is gone. And let me tell you something. People don't panic when they're blocked. They panic when they don't know where they stand. When you're blocked, you still matter. There's emotion there. Anger, resentment, hurt, something. But when you simply disappear, when you stop acknowledging their existence entirely, that's when the regret creeps in. Because now they start checking. They start looking for signs. They start wondering if you've moved on, if someone else has your attention, if they were ever as important as they thought they were. And when they don't find anything, when your silence stretches on day after day, that's when they start feeling the loss. They don't miss you immediately. No one ever does. At first, they enjoy the space. They convince themselves they made the right choice. They chase the thrill of something new. They ride the high of a fresh start. But time is undefeated. And every silent day that passes chips away at their certainty. Because now they start replaying old conversations. They start thinking about the moments they took for granted. They start wondering if you've replaced them. And nothing haunts a person more than the fear of being replaced. They expected you to wait, expected you to break, expected you to leave the door open just enough for them to wander back if they ever wanted to. But now, they're the ones standing outside, staring at a door that's already locked. And that's when it hits them. They lost something real. So hear this clearly. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't try to make them see your worth. You vanish. Not as a game, not as revenge, but as a statement, because your value was never up for debate. You are not an option. You are not something to be discarded and picked up when convenient. And the second you remove yourself from their reach, they will feel it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, when the excitement fades, when the reality of their choices sinks in, when they go searching for you and realize you're nowhere to be found, that's when the regret hits them like a brick. That's when they understand. That's when they wish they had never taken you for granted. But by then, you'll be too far ahead to care, because they thought you were watching, thought you were waiting, thought they could have their fun and still have you in their back pocket. They were wrong. And now that silence they once ignored is the only thing they hear. 3. New flame, same fire. Why it won't last. Right now they think they're winning. They think they got away, that they left behind something less and found something more. They're caught up in the high, the thrill, the excitement of something different. And in this moment it feels perfect. It always does in the beginning. The late-night conversations that feel endless. The inside jokes that make them feel like they've found something rare. The butterflies that make them believe this time is different. They walk around smiling, convinced they made the right choice. And you? You're left wondering what this person has that you didn't. What did you lack? Why were you so easy to replace? But let me tell you something. This isn't about you. It never was. Because what they won't admit, what they're trying so hard to ignore, is that they didn't fix anything. They didn't evolve. They didn't grow. They just found a new distraction. And distractions, they never last. They left because they were running from accountability, running from real love, running from themselves. And the hard truth is this: the same way they started this relationship is the same way it will end. Because when someone jumps from one person to the next, When they build something on infatuation instead of foundation, that's not love, that's escape. And what happens to people who keep running? They eventually run in circles. Right now, they don't see it. They're still lost in the honeymoon phase, that period where everything feels perfect, where they've convinced themselves that this time is different, that this time they finally got it right. But the clock is ticking. The spark will fade, the adrenaline will wear off. And when the thrill disappears and real life starts creeping in, that's when they'll feel it. That's when the doubts will surface. That's when the cracks will start to show. Because here's what they refuse to face. They didn't leave for someone better. They left because they couldn't face themselves, and no new relationship can change that. The same insecurities, they still have them. The same emotional baggage, they still carry it. The same patterns that cause things to crumble with you, they'll repeat them. Because it was never you that was the problem, it was them. And soon their new relationship will start to feel eerily familiar. Same arguments, same disappointments, same emptiness creeping in. Because the truth is, it was never about the person they left. It was about the person staring back at them in the mirror. And when they realize that their new situation hasn't erased the real issue, when they see that the person they left behind wasn't the problem, but rather the only real thing they had, that's when regret begins to creep in. At first, they'll try to fight it. They'll act unbothered. They'll laugh louder, post more, pretend their life is better than ever. But inside, the questions will start eating at them. Did I make a mistake? Did I really upgrade? Or did I just lose something I'll never get back? And this is where it gets interesting. Because now you're the mystery. Before they had access to your emotions, they knew where you stood. They felt secure knowing you still cared, still watched, still reacted. But now you've gone silent. You've stopped chasing, stopped checking, stopped giving them the satisfaction of knowing they still matter to you. And that is what drives them insane. Because suddenly they need to know, did you replace them? Are you better off? Have you found someone who treats you better than they did? And the moment they see you thriving without them, the moment they realize that life moved on without them, that you grew in their absence, that you became someone they no longer have access to. Because they expected you to stay stuck, expected you to break, expected to look back and see you waiting. But instead, they see you rising, glowing, becoming untouchable. And nothing haunts a person more than realizing they let go of something irreplaceable. So understand this, you don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to compete. You don't need to convince anyone of what they lost. Because time will do that for you. And when it does, they won't just regret losing you, they'll regret ever thinking they could replace you in the first place. For the door is closed, and that's what destroys them. Imagine walking into your favorite store. It's always open, always stocked, always there. You don't think twice before stepping in. You take what you need, leave when you want, and assume it'll be there the next time you come back. It's comfortable, familiar, reliable, but one day you show up and it's gone. No warning, no a closing soon sign, no explanation, just vanished. And suddenly you want it more than ever. You regret taking it for granted. You regret assuming it would always be there. You walk past, checking, hoping, wondering if it might come back. But it doesn't. And that eats at you more than anything else. That's exactly what happens when you make yourself unavailable. Right now they think they still have access to you. They assume you're still watching, still waiting, still hurting. They believe deep down that they could come back whenever they want. That all it would take is a late-night message, a casual, "How have you been?" A breadcrumb, a test, a moment of weakness, and you'd be right there picking up where they left off. But the moment you disappear without a word, without a reaction, that's when the regret sets in. Because people don't appreciate what's always there. They don't chase what's easily available. They don't miss what they believe they can always return to. They miss what they can't reach anymore. And here's where most people get it wrong. You think blocking them is the answer. You think cutting them off will make a statement. But blocking, that's an emotional reaction. It tells them you still feel something. It reassures them that they still have power over you. But when you don't block them, when you just vanish, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of complete indifference, that's when they start watching. That's when they start wondering. That's when they start feeling the loss. Because now you're the mystery. They expected access. They expected to be able to check in, to test the waters, to see if they still take up space in your mind. But when they go looking for signs of you and find nothing, expecting a cryptic post, a sad quote, a reaction, and instead there's nothing. That silence, that absence, that unknown, that's what breaks them. Because nothing haunts a person more than not knowing. They don't panic when you lash out. They don't panic when you beg. They don't even panic when you block them. Because all of that still gives them an answer. It tells them where you stand. It tells them they still matter to you. But when they have no idea what's going on in your mind, that's when they lose control. That's when they start questioning everything. And the best part, you don't have to do anything to make this happen. You don't have to post anything. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to play games or force a glow-up just to get a reaction. You just have to become unavailable. That means you stop checking their social media, stop refreshing their page, stop stalking their new relationship, stop looking for clues. Because every time you do, you're feeding the attachment that you're supposed to be breaking. You don't block them, you make them watch. Let them wonder why you haven't reacted. Let them sit in the silence. Let them see you thriving without ever needing to prove it to them. Focus on leveling up mentally, emotionally, physically. Read more, train harder, get sharper, get stronger. Become the person they never thought you'd be. Disappear in silence, but thrive in plain sight, not to make them jealous, not to win them back, but because you deserve to live a life where their absence doesn't even register. And I won't lie, this won't be easy. You'll want to check, you'll want to react, you'll want to prove something. Your emotions will try to pull you back, convincing you that if you don't make a move, they'll just forget about you. But let me ask you this, if they can forget you that easily, were they ever really yours? No, because people don't forget real love. They don't forget real connection. They don't forget the presence that once made them feel safe. And when their new relationship starts crumbling, when they start feeling the emptiness they tried to run from, when they realize that they mistook excitement for love, they will remember you. They will search for you. They will wonder about you, and they will realize you're no longer an option. But by then, you won't even care because you won't be the same person they walked away from. You'll be stronger, wiser, unreachable. And that's what will haunt them the most. Too little, too late. At first, they won't feel it. They'll be too caught up in the rush of something new, convinced they made the right choice. They'll be laughing, posting, moving like they've never been happier. To them, this is freedom, a fresh start, a better life. And you'll feel like the one who lost, like you were left behind while they ran towards something better. But let me tell you something, that feeling is temporary. Because the truth about people who jump from one person to the next is this: they don't move on, they distract themselves. And distractions, they don't last. Right now, they're enjoying the high, the thrill of someone new, the validation, the excitement of fresh attention. But that's all it is. A high. And what happens when a high fades? Reality kicks in. And when it does, that's when they start thinking about you. Because what they won't tell you, what they won't even admit to themselves, is that late at night, when everything quiets down, when the newness of their situation starts to wear off, when they're left alone with their thoughts, that's when the regret creeps in. Because deep down, they know they didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because they thought they could do better. They thought the grass was greener. But what they never realized is this: the grass isn't greener, it's just different. And different doesn't mean better. So the moment the excitement starts to fade, the moment they stop feeling that rush, the moment they realize that their new relationship isn't the fairy tale they built it up to be, that's when they start looking back. That's when you get that late night, "Hey, I've been thinking about you. That or how have you been?" And for a split second, they'll expect you to react. Because before, you would have. Before, you would have jumped at the chance to prove that you still cared. You would have read their message 100 times, analyzed every word, convinced yourself that this meant something. But this time, your response is nothing. Because by the time they reach out, you will have outgrown them. And that's what destroys them. Because the version of you they remember, the one who would have waited, who would have held on, who would have given them another chance the moment they showed interest, that version of you is gone. And in its place is a version of you that no longer sees them as something worth missing. And that's when the real panic sets in. Because they expected you to still care. They expected you to still be there. They expected to come back and find you exactly where they left you. But instead, they find nothing. No reply, no reaction, no sign that their return even registered in your world. And trust me, that silence, that absence, that complete lack of acknowledgement, that will haunt them more than anything you could ever say. Because suddenly, they have to face the reality of their choices. They have to confront the truth that they threw away something real for something temporary. They have to accept that they were never as irreplaceable as they thought. And worst of all, they have to come to terms with the fact that you moved on without them. And there is nothing more painful than realizing you lost something you will never get back. So when they come back, and they will, do nothing. Not because you're playing games, not because you're trying to get revenge, but because you genuinely don't care anymore. And that is the ultimate power move. Because when someone knows they've lost access to you, not because you're angry, not because you're bitter, but because you've genuinely moved past them, that's when they feel the loss the most. So let me ask you, when that message comes through, when that name pops up on your screen, when they finally realize what they lost, will you still be the person who waits, or will you be the person who outgrew them? Because by the time they realize what they lost, you'll be too far ahead to care. 6. The one that got away, and they can't undo it. At first, they convinced themselves they made the right choice. They walked away, telling themselves they had upgraded, that they had finally found what they were missing, that leaving you behind was the smartest decision they ever made. And for a while, they believed it. The new conversations felt exciting. The attention from someone else gave them validation. The thrill of starting over made them feel invincible. They told themselves this time was different, that this time they had found something better. But then, little by little, reality starts breaking down that illusion. The late-night conversations don't feel as deep. The laughs don't hit the same. The chemistry feels forced. The comfort isn't there. And suddenly they start comparing. They don't mean to, not at first. They try to push the thoughts away, but no matter how much they try to convince themselves that this new relationship is everything they wanted, they start feeling it, that missing piece, that emptiness, that ache that whispers to them in the quiet moments, because what you gave them was real. It wasn't built on infatuation. It wasn't surface level. It wasn't just another thrill. It was depth. It was understanding. It was connection. And when they finally realize that, it's already too late. Because by then, you've moved forward. You've evolved. You've become someone they can never have access to again. At first, they won't admit it. They'll try to ignore the feeling. They'll distract themselves with their new situation, their new person, with anything that keeps them from facing the truth. But the truth never stays buried for long. And when it hits them, it's going to hit hard. Because suddenly, they're remembering the things they tried to forget. The way you understood them like no one else did. The way you could read their mood without them saying a word. The way your presence made them feel safe, seen, and at home. They'll try to tell themselves it doesn't matter. They'll tell themselves they're fine, that they made the right choice, that they don't care. But deep down, they know they messed up. They know they lost something they will never find again. And that's when the real pain starts. Because it's one thing to move on when you truly outgrow someone, but to walk away from someone who was one of a kind, someone who gave you a love that doesn't come around twice, that regret lasts forever. Because now they're stuck with the realization that no one compares to you. They thought they could replace you. They thought they could find someone just like you, but easier. Someone who wouldn't challenge them to grow. Someone who wouldn't call them out on their flaws. Someone who would accept the bare minimum and never expect more. And maybe for a while, that felt good. But now, they're waking up to the cold truth that what they had with you, they will never find again. And the most painful part, you no longer care. Because you don't wait for people to realize your worth. You don't sit around hoping they'll come back. You don't lower your value just because someone else was too blind to see it the first time. You move forward. And that is what destroys them the most. Because the worst thing for someone who took you for granted isn't losing you. It's knowing that they lost you for good. So when they sit there looking back at what they lost, realizing they threw away something they'll never find again, that's when the real pain begins. And by then, you'll be too far ahead to even notice. 7. You're unforgettable. They'll never catch up. They thought they left you behind. They believed you'd simply fade into the background while they strutted into a new life, a new relationship, convinced that this was an upgrade in their eyes. Stepping away from you was like discarding an old book for a shiny new bestseller, assuming you'd remain a relic of the past, a faded memory they could easily replace. They expected you to be the one constantly looking back, watching, waiting, wondering what went wrong. But what they never anticipated was that you would rise, thriving without them, proving that real revenge isn't about trying to show them they were wrong. It's about showing yourself that you were always right all along. Imagine their shock when, like an unexpected encore at the end of a concert, you begin living a life so rich and fulfilling that every moment without them feels like a victory. Picture the scene. While they're busy chasing fleeting highs with someone new, distracting themselves with the buzz of novelty and the empty validation of fresh attention, you are quietly building a fortress of self-worth and purpose. Your days are no longer spent pining over what could have been, but filled with moments that remind you of your true value. As the old saying goes, you can't replace a masterpiece. In your life, every step forward is a brushstroke on a canvas that they can never hope to replicate. At first, the thrill of a new romance might seem like an endless summer, with late-night conversations that spark excitement, laughter that echoes like music, and the rush of being adored. They may even convince themselves they found what they were missing, that this time they made the right choice. But slowly, the magic begins to fade. Those late-night talks lose their depth. The laughter sounds hollow. The spark feels forced. Soon enough, reality starts to seep in, and the brightness of their new relationship dims, revealing cracks where genuine connection once shone. And when that moment of clarity hits, They'll be forced to confront the painful truth. They never truly replaced you. They found a temporary distraction, a fleeting high that fades as quickly as it arrived. You might ask, what if they start texting? What if they reach out thinking you still care? Well, let them, because when they finally send that late night, "Hey, how have you been?" message, or when they impulsively scroll through your social media in search of a sign that you still think about them, they will be met with the silence of a life moved on, a life where your focus is entirely on growth and self-discovery. That silence will speak louder than any words ever could, leaving them to wonder how someone they once knew so intimately could become entirely untouchable. They'll be haunted by the realization that everything they took for granted, every moment they thought was replaceable, was in fact unique and irreplaceable. Consider it like witnessing a breathtaking sunrise after a long, dark night. While they are left in the cold remnants of their temporary fixations, you are basking in the warmth of your newfound strength and clarity. Every day, you wake up to a reality where their absence is not a void, but a space you filled with purpose and passion. Their choice to chase after a mirage leaves them with the bitter taste of regret, as they come to understand that nothing can ever truly compare to what they lost. The more they try to fill the gap with something new, the more they realize that the vibrant tapestry of your presence, marked by understanding, loyalty, and depth, cannot be woven again. In the quiet moments, when the world slows down and the distractions fade, they will begin to see the truth. They will remember how you understood them without a word, how your very presence made them feel safe, seen, and at home. That is when they'll confront the harsh reality. You were the best they ever had, a love built on substance rather than superficial thrills. And in that moment, as the echo of their choices reverberates around them, they'll understand that the life you've built, so rich, so vibrant, so undeniably your own, is something they can never touch. They might scramble to grasp at the remnants of what once was, but by then you will have moved too far ahead. The sweetest revenge, then, is not in proving them wrong or in chasing them back. It is in living a life that shines so brightly they can only watch from afar. It's about finding freedom in the realization that their departure wasn't a loss but a liberating gift. It's waking up every day knowing that the space they left behind was meant for your growth, your success, your happiness. Their regret will be their silent companion, a constant reminder of the chance they squandered while you were out there creating a reality where your worth is undeniable. So let them watch. Let them sit in their regret. Let them wonder how you managed to turn pain into power. Every time they refresh their page looking for a hint that you might still be thinking of them, they will find nothing but the brilliance of someone who has moved on, who has risen above the past, and who now lives a life so full and vibrant that their regret is the only thing left behind. And in that moment when they realize what they lost, it will be too late. Because you are already too far ahead, too empowered, and too unforgettable to ever look back.